All right, let's kick things off with something pretty bold, maybe even controversial.
Mm.
Your house isn't an asset. It's a liability.
Wow. Yeah. That definitely goes against the grain, doesn't it? I mean, for so many people, buying a home is like the biggest financial goal.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, Robert Kiyosaki said that way back in 1997. Fast forward 10 years to 2007.
The credit market collapse.
Spot on. And suddenly, millions of people found out the hard way that, yeah, their homes weren't assets. They were actually costing them money. Big time.
It's a stark example, and it really forces you to rethink basic financial definitions, which is kind of the point of this whole deep dive, right?
Absolutely. So welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we are digging into some really powerful, maybe unconventional financial ideas from Robert T. Kiyosaki's book, Incremented to IQ Financiero, or Increase Your Financial IQ.
Yep, we've gone through his work, and our mission today is to sort of give you a shortcut, help you understand why maybe that traditional advice isn't working anymore.
And what being truly financially smart actually looks like today.
Because the big idea, the core message in all of Kiyosaki's stuff is that money itself, it doesn't make you rich.
It's the financial intelligence.
Exactly, your financial IQ. And that's what we're going to unpack how that works in the real world.
Okay, so let's tackle this core problem he brings up.
Mm.
Why does financial IQ matter so much now? He talks about outdated advice, work hard, save money, pay off debt, live frugally, diversify. Why does he say that stuff became obsolete after 1971?
Right. Well, he flags two key years. 1971 is the first big one. That's when the U.S. took the dollar off the gold standard.
Yeah.
Meaning before 71, a dollar was technically backed by gold. Real, tangible stuff.
Mm.
After 71, it became just currency. Paper backed by, well, faith in the government. It could be printed more easily, and its value wasn't fixed.
Okay, so the money itself changed fundamentally. We became less like solid money and more like, well, currency.
Precisely. Then comes 1974, another huge shift, especially for individuals.
What happened then?
That's when companies really started moving away from guaranteed lifetime pensions, those old defined benefit plans.
Ah, the ones your grandparents maybe had, where the company promised a certain payout?
Exactly. They started shifting everyone to defined contribution plans. Think 401ks. Suddenly, all the responsibility, all the risk for retirement, it landed squarely on the employee's shoulders.
Gotcha. So 1971 changes the nature of money. 1974 changes who's responsible for your retirement savings.
And Kiyosaki's point is, these two things created a kind of new capitalism, sticking rigidly to the old rules, just working hard, saving that devaluing currency well. It might not get you where you want to go anymore. It could even lead to struggle.
Which leads us to his equation. Information plus education, knowledge. He says we're drowning in information, but without financial education.
You can't make sense of it. You can't turn that raw data into useful knowledge.
So people end up making mistakes.
Big time. Like believing their house is automatically an asset when often it's taking money out of their pocket each month. Or diligently saving cash while inflation is eating away at its value. They have the info, maybe, but not the framework to understand its real meaning.
And this is interesting. He claims everyone has money problems, not just people struggling to get by.
Yeah, it's a paradox, right? The poor, obviously, their problem is often having too little money. But the rich, they can have problems managing too much money.
How does he illustrate that?
He uses that really vivid MC Hammer example. You remember the commercial?
Vaguely, yeah. Living large.
Totally. Mansion, fancy cars. I can't touch this, blasting. Then, like, the next shot in the ad, he's sitting outside the same mansion, but now there's a for sale sign.
Oof.
Right. Hammer made millions, but he didn't have the financial IQ to handle it. His problem wasn't lack of money, it was lack of understanding.
So it really hammers home the point. It's not how much you make, it's what you do with it. And he also says just giving money away doesn't fix things either.
Right.
With Social Security.
Yeah, he points to the U.S. Social Security system, arguing that for a long time, if you earn too much, you'd lose benefits. It actually discouraged initiative, in a way. It didn't solve the underlying problem of needing financial skills.
So financial intelligence fundamentally is just the ability to solve financial problems.
That's the core definition he uses.
Yeah.
And he uses the toothache analogy, ignore a small problem, like a little credit card debt.
And it grows into a massive extraction, like bankruptcy.
Exactly. You have to address the problem, small or large.
Okay, so if everyone has these problems, but maybe ignores them or tackles them differently,
Yeah.
how does he describe the approaches of the poor, middle class, and rich?
It's a pretty stark contrast. He suggests the poor often feel like victims, maybe avoid the problems. The middle class, they often seek security, academic answers, maybe get trapped working for money, becoming prisoners, as he puts it.
That's where his poor dad, rich dad idea comes in. The academic versus the entrepreneur.
Spot on. His poor dad represented the traditional academic secure job path. His rich dad saw problems as opportunities. For the rich dad, money was like a score in a game. The goal wasn't just to have it, but to get better at the game of making and managing it by solving problems.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if the old rules are broken and we all have problems to solve, how do we actually do that? This is where his 5 financial IQs come in, right? Like a roadmap.
Exactly. Think of them as 5 core skills, 5 types of intelligence you need, and financial IQ is the measurement of how good you are at these skills.
Let's break down the first one. IQ #1. Producing more money. What's the key distinction here?
So it's measured simply by how much you earn, net dollars. But the crucial part isn't just earning a paycheck. That's the E for employee or A for self-employed quadrants he talks about.
Yeah.
The real goal for increasing this IQ is moving beyond working for money. It's about shifting to the D for business owner and I for investor quadrants, building or buying assets that generate income for you, passive income, portfolio income.
He has some stories about this himself, right? Like his wallet business.
Oh, yeah, the nylon wallet business. Great story. He was getting crushed by cheap imitations, pirates, he called them, instead of pouring money into lawyers.
Which just makes lawyers rich.
Right. He decided to, quote, join the pirates. He licensed the competitors to make the wallets for him. It lowered his costs, solved the imitation problem, and let him focus on sales. It's about solving the problem creatively.
That's brilliant, actually, and it ties into what he says about emotional intelligence, quoting Buffett.
Absolutely. Buffett's line, if you can't control your emotions, you cannot control your money. You need that resilience, that emotional control to find those creative solutions and stick with them, even when it's tough.
Okay, so you figure out how to make more money. Great. But then you've got to keep it. Which brings us to IQ tag 2, protecting your money.
Yes, and this might be even harder today. This IQ is measured by the percentage of income you actually keep after the financial predators, as he calls them, take their bite.
Predators. That sounds intense. Who are they?
Well, the biggest one, he says, is taxes. Then you've got bankers with hidden fees, maybe brokers who are more salespeople than advisors.
Churning accounts for commissions?
Could be. Also, companies pushing products that benefit them, not necessarily you. Even family or in-laws asking for money, sometimes legal advisors. It's a whole ecosystem looking for a piece of your pie.
He uses an analogy for this, right? Something about Roman coins.
Yeah, the clipping analogy. Back in the Roman Empire, people would literally shave tiny bits of gold or silver off the edges of coins before passing them on. Over time, the coins became worth less and less.
Ah, so inflation and hidden fees are like modern-day clipping.
That's the idea. They subtly erode the value of your money, your savings, without you always noticing.
So practically speaking, how do you protect against this? What's his main strategy?
His big push is towards passive and portfolio income rather than just earned income like a salary.
Why that specific?
Because earned income is usually taxed the highest and is hardest to shield. Passive income from assets, like real estate or dividends, often gets much better tax treatment. Plus, it can grow without you actively working for it every hour.
And what about advisors, like brokers?
He's very clear.
Yeah.
Find good ones. People who are educated, who actually invest in the same things they recommend, and who focus on building a relationship, not just making a sale. He mentions his own long-term brokers, Tom and John, as examples of doing it right.
Makes sense. Okay, next up, IQ tag 3, budgeting your money. Now, most people hear budget and think cut back, cut back, cut back.
Right, they think deficit budget, always trying to spend less. Kiyosaki flips that. He talks about creating a surplus budget.
Meaning
Meaning the primary focus shouldn't just be cutting expenses. It should be increasing income so that you have a surplus, an excess after covering your costs. Constantly pinching pennies, he argues, keeps you living an average life, which he sees as its own kind of financial struggle.
Okay, so it's about expansion, not just restriction. This is where pay yourself first comes in. But he does it differently, right?
Yeah, his version is hardcore. It's not save what's left over. It's make saving, investing, and even charitable giving your first expenses. He and his wife, Kim, would allocate like 30% of their income straight to assets first.
Wow, 30% off the top.
Yeah.
What did that do to their day-to-day budget?
It put pressure on them. It forced them to find ways to earn more money to cover their living expenses. It was a deliberate strategy to boost their IQ, ITAG 1, their income-producing ability. They had to work like crazy, as he puts it.
That's intense. Using budgeting as a driver for income growth.
Exactly. And he says your expense column is like a crystal ball where your money goes today predicts your financial future tomorrow.
And this connects to his idea of good debt versus bad debt.
Totally. Bad debt is the stuff you pay for, things that don't generate income, like maybe a car loan paid from your salary. It makes you poorer. Good debt
Is debt that someone else pays for.
Right. Usually it's debt taken on to acquire an asset that generates enough income to cover the debt payments and put money in your pocket. Think rental property where the rent covers the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and still leaves you profit.
He had that example about the Bentley, right?
Yeah. He didn't just go out and buy a Bentley with his earnings. He bought assets first. Then the income from those assets paid for the Bentley, the liability. Assets buy liabilities. That's the rich dad way.
That's a powerful mindset shift. Okay, let's move to IQ Tag 4. Leveraging your money. Leverage often scares people, sounds like high risk.
It does, but for Kiyosaki, leverage simply means doing more with less. It's not just about dumping money in a bank where it earns minimal interest. It's about using resources, often other people's money, or OPM, to control larger assets.
Like his big apartment deal.
Exactly. That $17 million apartment complex he bought in 2007, he only used 20% of his own money. The bank put up the other 80%. That's significant leverage.
But isn't using that much borrowed money incredibly risky? That's what most people think.
And Kiyosaki pushes back hard on that. He says risk isn't just about leverage, it's about control. If you know your investment inside out, if you can manage the factors that determine its success, then leverage can actually magnify your returns without necessarily increasing your real risk proportionally.
What about the risk of market crashes, like the one that happened right after he bought that property?
Yeah.
He also talks about the wealth effect, right?
Yes, the wealth effect is crucial. That's when rising prices, maybe just due to inflation, make people feel wealthier, so they borrow against assets like their homes. But the real value, the purchasing power, might not be increasing or could even be falling. He avoids this trap because his property value isn't based on speculation.
It's based on a cash flow.
Exactly. He controls the rents, manages the expenses, handles the debt. The property's value is tied to its ability to produce income, not just what someone might pay for it tomorrow. That gives him control, which minimizes risk.
And this ties into why he doesn't really believe diversification.
Pretty much. He echoes Warren Buffett again. Diversification is a protection against ignorance. Instead of spreading yourself thin across things you don't understand, Kiyosaki advocates focusing. Become an expert in one area, like his niche in real estate, where you can exert control.
Okay, so you use leverage, you gain control. What's the exit strategy? Does he just sell?
Often, no. His preferred strategy is refinancing. When the property value goes up, because he's increased the income, he can borrow against that increased value, pull out tax-free cash, often getting his original investment back or more, while still owning the asset, which continues to generate income.
Whoa. So you get your initial money back, pay no immediate tax on it, and still own the income-producing thing.
That's the goal. He calls it achieving an infinite return because your own cash is no longer tied up in the deal, but you're still getting paid.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but maybe intimidating for someone starting out.
For sure. But he always stresses starting small. Dream big, but start small. He talks about his very first deal, an $18,000 condo. He put down $2,000.
Which he borrowed from a credit card.
Right. And it cash flowed like $35 a month. Tiny start, but it proved the concept. It's about learning the game.
Okay, last one. IQ #5. Increasing your financial information. But you said earlier, information alone isn't enough.
Exactly. He makes that distinction very clear. Information is only information, but intelligence is the ability to give meaning to information. It's about interpretation and understanding.
You gave that anecdote again, the one illustrating this?
Yeah, the story about the old lady trading gold. He had the same price info she did, but she understood the why behind the price moves, the fear driving people to buy gold. She could interpret the data, give it meaning, and profit from it. He couldn't at that time.
So it's about understanding the context, the trends like oil, silver, whatever, And the intrinsic value of something, not just the ticker price.
Absolutely. He brings up Buffett's idea of intrinsic value for a business. Can it make money? Does it have a competitive edge, a moat? Is it managed well financially? Can it grow? Does it have smart leaders? That's the kind of deeper information, the understanding that constitutes financial intelligence.
And he applies this lack of intelligence sometimes to governments, too.
He does. He suggests governments often lack financial integrity, trying to solve deep problems by just printing money or piling on debt, which often just kicks the can down the road or makes things worse. It's information without intelligence on a national scale.
Okay, so we have these 5 IQs, but how do we actually develop them? How do we build this financial genius? He talks about using your whole brain.
Yeah, he breaks it down into 3 parts. The left brain, logic, analysis, academics. The right brain, creativity, imagination, seeing possibilities. And the subconscious, emotions, reactions, gut feelings.
And traditional schooling focuses mostly on.
The left brain, logic, facts, figures. Which is important, but Kiyosaki argues it leaves many people vulnerable because their subconscious managing fear, desire for security isn't trained. They might logically see an opportunity but be too afraid to act.
So you need the logic, the creativity, and the emotional control. How do you develop those, especially the subconscious part? He stresses environment, right?
Hugely. He says your environment is maybe the most powerful teacher. He even brings up neuroscience mirror neurons. We literally tend to become like the people we spend time with.
So choose your environment carefully. What kind of environments does he suggest for growth?
He lists several transitional environments. Things like good schools, if structured right, maybe church for spiritual strength, the military for discipline and managing fear, even multi-level marketing to build sales skills and overcome rejection.
Small businesses too, seminars, coaching.
All of those.
Yeah.
And his cash flow clubs where people play his financial education board game. The idea is to put yourself in situations that challenge you, force you to learn practical skills, manage emotions, and get feedback alongside supportive people.
It's interesting. He also says successful entrepreneurs often have ignorance and courage, not just smarts.
Right. Sometimes not knowing all the million reasons something could fail allows you the courage to just go for it. You learn by doing, by solving the problems that come up.
And that loops back to feedback, which is the final piece.
Yes. Feedback, even when it's negative or uncomfortable, is absolutely essential for growth. But here's the catch. Our subconscious often wants to block out uncomfortable feedback. We deny it, we rationalize it away.
So you need to consciously work on being open to feedback, changing your environment, shifting your internal mindset.
That's the key. It's an ongoing process. You have to actively seek environments and feedback that push you to grow, to increase all 5 of those financial IQs.
Wow, okay. So recapping this deep dive into Kiyosaki's thinking. It's about understanding the new rules, solving problems using those 5 interconnected financial IQs, producing more, protecting it, budgeting for surplus, leveraging it wisely, and constantly improving your understanding of financial information.
It really is a continuous journey. Financial intelligence isn't a destination. It's a process of actively tackling financial challenges and learning from them.
So the final thought for you listening is this. If you genuinely want a life beyond just getting by, beyond average, what kind of financial problems are you willing to actively seek out and solve? How can you start flexing those 5 financial IQ muscles, maybe even starting small today?